Welcome to the Popcorn Counter. We have just come out of watching Jeanne Dielman. I still can't say the name properly. Jeanne Dielman. Tell me again. It's Jeanne Dielman.
Jeanne Dielman.
Yeah.
23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles.
That's at least I'm here with somebody who knows how to say the name of the film, and we can confidently say this is the greatest film of all time. Did you think it was the greatest film of all time?
Oui, mais bien sûr.
It feels like there's a switch on the back of your head, a little bit like Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story, which just flicks you into French mode now. Which is, I thought it was a great film.
Yeah.
Was it the greatest film of all time? I don't know.
No, I think it's a very good film. It's quite an achievement. Works from a real solid premise and sticks with it, so it's committed to itself. But I was telling you before, I think calling it the greatest film of all time is a disservice because I think people will go to look at it and then most people are going to give up on it 20 minutes in and then go out to slam it on social media and it'll quickly become not the greatest film of all time. So it's a tough title, the greatest film of all time.
But is there a greatest film of all time? I mean, I think it's constantly changing. It depends on the context, doesn't it? It depends on the viewer. It depends on your personal experiences. It depends whether a film touches a nerve with you or not.
Precisely, yeah. And certainly, there are always new films to see. So what?
Yep.
Maybe the greatest film of all time is coming out today. Mission Impossible or Barbie.
But I mean,
or not.
These ideas of a list of the best films.
Yeah.
Is basically it's promotional, isn't it? So the film industry, it's an industry, it's a business. Yeah. The reason that the Oscars come out, because it's not necessarily about the best films, but it's a great promotional exercise to get people talking about recent films, and going to the cinema, when it's a quiet time of the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like in sort of February, March, or whatever. The Palme d'Or, it's an easy way to get films into the papers rather than it's easier to talk about film stars lining up on the kind of the red carpet than it is to wait a second, what's happening in the front? What's happening outside your house?
I think someone just drove into the lobby here. Oh, it's a Chevrolet car. It's an advertisement. It's Chevrolet advertising their new Montego. Oh.
See that? Or they're filming Fast and the Furious 12 in your road right now.
Sorry, there's a no parking ban on the street right now, and it might lead to some insanity like that. But Tom Hanks drives a Chevrolet.
I mean, people don't do this with. I don't know. People do sort of do this with books or records, don't they? Or records, listen to Be Grandad, music or songs or whatever. So there are awards, aren't there? And there are lists of 100 bests. What was it? Billboard publishing the 100 best album covers the other week.
Yeah.
I was looking at that, and you kind of think, people love these 100 best lists, but it's rare that they tend to be definitive in the way that best film lists are. The Sight and Sound top 100 list. It's a way to get people talking about sight and sound, isn't it? I suppose. Yeah. But they do kind of claim to be definitive, and it's always the same films that turn up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an interesting choice for them to have Jeanne Dielman there, though, because again, it might sully their reputation a little bit. I don't know. I think it's a brave choice. But I think you're absolutely right. This is all super subjective. So perhaps we should just stop this popcorn counter right now, because your list is going to be different from my list. And I think you're right. It's fodder for getting the opportunity to release some new piece of advertising or literature or magazine, or get some eyes on other papers or whatnot, or other websites. So it's a dangerous game. It's a slippery slope.
But we like slippery things.
We do. Yeah.
I knew we were going to talk about this. So where is it? In my pocket, I did write down my top 10 films. So I came up with a list.
Okay.
And I couldn't quite do a top 10, so I ended up doing a top 8.
Ooh.
But there are 19 films in the top 8. 3 of them are rolled together into one entry.
Okay.
So it's 17. So my top 10 is only a top 8, but there are 17 films in it.
That's great. That's brilliant. That's the kind of allowance you should give yourself. You shouldn't just hold yourself to 10. I started with 5. I added 5 more. I have 10. I followed the rules.
You followed the rules. How boring.
We were talking about how this is always changing. In 2 minutes, I could come up with 10 different films entirely. So it's a little bit a little bit just off the cuff, and I could talk about films that I really like for one reason or another. What do we do next? Do we just list our 10 films?
I think we should shout them out in rapid succession and then come back.
Okay.
Because I always I don't know whether you look at these top 100 lists in the same way that I do. But what I do is I immediately scroll to number 1.
Oh.
And then scroll backwards quickly.
Okay.
And maybe pause like twice. But I certainly don't kind of enjoy a long, slow countdown, and I don't read the details of every entry. So, do you want to read out your? Because you've actually obeyed the rules, so maybe you should actually be allowed to go first. Do you want to read out your top 10?
Okay, I'm going to read out my top 10. 2 of them are familiar to the family because
I thought you said 2 of them are the same.
Yeah,
but okay, carry on. Yep. Okay. Good.
And again, these could change in 5 minutes. North by Northwest.
Oh, good.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, right.
Cinema Paradiso.
Okay.
Delicatessen.
Oh.
Fargo.
Okay, yeah, I can get down with that.
The Seventh Seal.
Oh, yes.
Giant.
Oh.
8.5.
Okay.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh, okay. That's the Spanish part of you coming out. Yep.
And I did one for each Coen brother. The Big Lebowski. I don't know how I got 2 of those in there. I'm sorry about that. That was kind of a mistake. Oversight. I guess you get they kind of wrote and directed together, and then it's
they made a bunch of good films.
They made a bunch of good films, so that's a mistake on my part. But that's what could happen within 5 minutes. That could change. Okay, I think it's your turn.
Is that your turn? Okay, my
top 17,
my top 8.
Yep,
meaning 17. Yes. So I have put down. So you will hear some familiar names.
Good.
Straight into number 1 with a bullet. Vertigo.
Yeah.
Citizen Kane.
Oh, yeah.
It's a stereotype, but I'm sorry.
No.
The Rise to Power of Louis XIV by Roberto Rossellini.
Oh.
Which is slow cinema, difficult to like, but I found very moving. Then Lost Highway.
Ooh.
Videodrome.
Oh, yeah.
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I think we saw that not so long ago.
We did, didn't we? Yeah. But we figured out I'd seen it many, many more times than you.
Yes.
The Ghost in the Shell.
Ooh. Wait, which one? The one that we reviewed?
Yeah, the one that we reviewed. I love that film.
Okay. Oh, good.
Aliens. Although I partly love that because I sneaked in when I was too young to actually see it legally.
Oh, well done.
So it has that frisson of excitement.
Did you say aliens or alien?
Aliens, I'm going to put down, you know? Alien, I never saw at the cinema, but Aliens, I did.
Is that the one that... was that Jean Genet? Who directed Aliens?
No, that's James Cameron.
Oh, that's the James Cameron one. Okay, great.
Yeah. Obviously Avatar. No, not really. I'm joking. 400 Blows.
Oh, yeah. True.
My Neighbor Totoro.
Don't know that. My Neighbor Totoro.
Which is a Japanese animated film.
Oh, good.
From Studio Ghibli. The Seventh Seal.
Yeah.
I've got your back, bro. Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, yeah.
But haven't seen that for a long time, though, and I'm worried it would be a bit white savior-ish if I watched it now.
Yes.
Mad Max Fury Road.
Ooh.
Greatest action film of the 21st century. And then I have Die Hard, which is such great fun. Toy Story 3.
Ooh.
That was a difficult. And then 3 movies rolled together, 3 Disney princesses that walk hand in hand in my mind. Frozen, Moana, and Zootopia. 3 female-led animations, which I think are a great trilogy, a great triad of Disney animation. And I have seen those 3 probably more added together than all of the other films because they're Disney films and we watched a lot of them, but I still think they are terrific, terrific work. So we both get a representation from Hitchcock, yes, but different ones.
Yep.
You haven't got a Kubrick on your list.
I do not.
But you have 2 Cohen Brothers films.
I do. And I have Lamentation. Should have saved space for someone else.
But do you? How many of your films are non-English language films?
2, 3, 4, 5, 5.
5. Oh, I've only got 4. You win.
That's interesting. Half the list. Yeah. But you've got great animation representation.
That's partly because when you live in a household with small children for a few years, you watch a lot of animation. But I think animation at the moment is where a lot of the smart people are working, aren't they?
Yeah. You've got more films that are appropriate for children, which is great. I don't think any of my films are really appropriate for children. They're not bad. Pan's Labyrinth in a really dark way is kind of that. But it's interesting we both have Seventh Seal, because that's a film that I've seen many times now at different stages in my life, and I finally got it when we worked on that. What's that, last winter time? I think we talked about that in maybe January or February or something. That was perfect. That might have been last year, actually.
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, because it was for the Northman. Yeah, that was definitely last year. So it was about a year ago. And both have Hitchcock. Vertigo is a fantastic film. I agree with you. I love North by Northwest in the sense that just doesn't stop. It's really just that film moves so well. It's very watchable. Cary Grant's great. It's got all the espionage and all the landmark stuff, and just love that film. And just the last few seconds give you so much information. It's wonderful.
Do you think any of your choices are affected by the circumstances where you watched the film?
Yeah.
For a brief while, I was like a film reviewer for a website.
Yeah.
And they were and our sort of remit was so that we would do kind of all the stuff that you wouldn't find at the local Odeon, basically anything which was either kind of foreign language or art house or minority or stuff which was not super mainstream. But I would still go to the same screenings as all the kind of the big proper reviewers, and so the reviewers from the newspapers and the TV would be in the same little kind of screening room in Soho. But the distributors really knew what they were doing, because they would always try and butter you up before the screening. So they would give you this really, really nice coffee, and they'd give you snacks and a bit of a chat, and they'd have some nice people who would smile and say hello and give you a little bit of information about the film.
Yeah.
I remember watching, there was a documentary about Glastonbury where they gave everybody these big pots of ice cream just before the kind of the showing. And these little circumstances, having a nice coffee and a chat and a bun and an ice cream, really affects how you view the film. The fact that you're sitting in an extremely comfortable chair in a very comfortable air-conditioned room, and the sound and the picture is absolutely perfect. All of this, I think, gives you this positive mindset.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of the game of bumping up the ratings of films. And I know with some of these films, the way that I watched them, or the place where I watched them, or the people I watched them with, are part of what put them in my top 17.
Yeah.
And not always necessarily because I watched them in pleasant surroundings. Videodrome, I remember I first saw that on a tiny black and white 11-inch screen in the encore room in the hospital in Hemel Hempstead, where this is the only time in my whole career where I did a 72-hour on-call. And so I've been there for all of Friday, all of Saturday, all of Sunday, and I was looking forward to going home on Monday morning. And on the Saturday night, it was quiet enough on the ward that my little on-call room, which was like a side room on the care of the elderly ward, I had 2 hours free when the bleep didn't go off and no one called me and no one knocked on the door and no one asked me to come in and do any jobs on the ward. And so I watched Videodrome on this kind of quite grainy black and white television. Yeah. But I was already kind of institutionalized, and my brain was already kind of scrambled by not really sleeping properly for 2 nights and sort of running up and down the corridors all the time. And part of that sort of weird brain disturbance transferred itself into my enjoyment of the film.
Yeah.
So the film really imprinted itself very deeply on my brain, but in no small part because I was kind of brain-addled when I watched it before the film even started. Yeah, I think that is part of what transports a film into your top 10, isn't it? In the same way that Aliens, my friend Jamal and I, we snuck in to see it, and managed to. It was the certificate was 18 or something like that in this country. There's no way we were old enough to go and see it, but we managed to blag a ticket and got in, and that was a large part of the excitement of seeing the film, knowing that we weren't really supposed to be there.
Well, I think for me, the 2 films that stand out with some sort of strong association, I think are Cinema Paradiso, which is really a film about film, and then Delicatessen, because I saw those both when I was undergrad. So I was living in Montreal, and I think my sister told me to go see Cinema Paradiso, and she was absolutely right. I just love that film. It's about film, but it's also very much about growing up and life. And I think at this point in my life, I was starting to sort of toy with little scripts and things like that. And I thought, oh, wow, filmmaking could be kind of cool. And then not long after that, I think Delicatessen comes out maybe a year later, 91 or 92 maybe. And I'm still there. And I just saw that film and I thought, that's kind of the cinema that I really want to do, this sort of absurd black comedy. So that I will always pair those two films, and they'll always probably pop up on one of my all-time lists just because of that. It was then that I think I was starting to form this filmmaker mentality and this mind for cinema. And I started looking at films differently around that time as well, and just started really just ravenously seeing as much as I possibly could. And I think it was because those films just stood out as like gold standards for me, and kind of inspired me to start writing more seriously in scripts. And it took a little while to get to the point where I actually wrote a script, but I think those are two films that really kicked off that part of my life.
That Delicatessen story explains a lot, actually, because the first script of yours that I read was that, like, that kind of amazing surreal script about like kind of like sperm donors and genetic engineering and like all sorts of like really, really crazy stuff going on in that script. And now I understand. Oh yeah, yes. Right.
Yeah.
So there is an element of that kind of surreal chaos from Delicatessen.
Yeah, definitely.
In that script. What was that called again? What was that script
It's called Sum of the Parts, and it's sort of a
right, yes,
Frankenstein in reverse, where the founder of a sort of like it's kind of like a men's club or a lodge, ends up being put back together after he dies. Yeah, and it's focused on a lobstering community here in Maine. So, and you helped me a lot on that one too, because I had medical questions. I remember sitting down and asking you about artificial penises. How do I get an artificial...
Yeah, obviously I knew an awful lot about that, yes. I'll be your expert there, yes.
No, you helped me with the word, I think it was a micromesh. Also, I was looking at cellular structure. I had a lot of sciencey questions.
Oh, yes, protein micromesh. I remember now, yes. Well, that's brilliant. That was my one 2-word credit on that entire script, yes. Do you imagine that if we were to have this same conversation in 10 years, there would be any different films on your list? Because I noticed looking at my list, I think the most recent of them, I think is probably Mad Max, and that was at least 10 years old now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that anything new has snuck into my list in the last 10 years, and I'm a little bit worried that nothing new will sneak into it in the next 10 years. How fluid do you think your list is?
I hope it's a bit more fluid, because I think Pan's Labyrinth is probably 2008 or something like that, and that's my most recent film, so I'm 15 years out. I don't know, I mean, cinema is sort of like the word for things that are classic for long term, like, whoa. What's happening at your place now?
I mean, if you hold that thought, I'm going to quickly open the door.
Okay. This would be an advertisement for dog biscuits or doorbells, I suppose.
Oof. So we have. Oh, wait a second. Oh man, this is going terribly wrong now. I've even unplugged the microphone.
No.
There we go. We have. Hello, you still there?
I am. I've been here the whole time.
Good, right. Sorry about that. Oh, how very unprofessional. Oh, my God.
Not just me. The entire Two Reel Cinema Club audience is here. Waiting for you.
We have Phoebe staying with us at the moment, who is a neighbour's dog, who is like Kiki's best friend, but she loves to rough. She's pretty happy to express herself vocally.
She needs a Purina dog biscuit.
I think she needs... I don't know what she needs. If we'd figured out what she needed, we would have given it to her by now and stopped her roughing. But no, I think what she needs is any excuse to rough, and she's got that right now. I probably was making some extremely salient, clever, intelligent point a moment ago, and I have no idea what it was.
You were talking about the fluidity of these lists, and I was saying I was talking about cinema. Actually, I forget who came to us and talked to us about this, but like, first it's a movie. And then if it's a really good movie, we call it a film. And then if it's still a good movie 25, 30, 40 years later, it's cinema. I don't know if that means anything. I just remember someone lectured at us when we were in school. And I think, there's certainly a point there. Like the really like universal stories that are really well told kind of become cinema, and they're always going to be on this list, I think. And then it's hard to... judge films, I think, for a little while. I think you need like 10 years before it's really settled in. You know, how relevant was it at the time, and how relevant is it going forward? I think those are good questions. Because the ones that are on the list sort of are about something, I think, ultimately. Some of them maybe not.
Yeah.
But it has to have, you know, some sort of foothold on universal culture, really, if it's going to be on a top 10 list that's international anyway. But it has to have a place and hold that place in culture.
I have two worries about our lists here. One is that in the same way that as you get older, you get to a certain age, a certain moment in your life when you wake up and you stop listening to new music, and suddenly you realize that all your playlists are just things that you listened to before or when you were younger.
Yep.
And I hope the same thing isn't true with cinema. And I'm slightly worried looking at my list that I may be experiencing the same phenomenon. But the other thing that worries me maybe even more, and maybe we've talked about this before, is this notion that there are still people making jazz records, jazz albums these days, but there's no John Coltrane, is there? There's no Miles Davis.
Yep.
You know, and there are still people writing, you know, classical symphonies, but you know, nobody really listens to them or buys them anymore.
Yep.
And in the same way, you know, maybe people are still making films, but the great golden age of cinema with a capital C is now in the past, and those young people who are the brightest and the cleverest with the sparkiest ideas and the greatest hunger to innovate don't go into the film industry anymore. In fact, given many recent events, there are lots of reasons why bright, sparky young people would give the cinema industry a wide berth, frankly. Yeah. I'm not sure I recommend any young people I know to go into the film industry, but maybe the cleverest and the brightest will now go and do, you know, other things. They will make video games, or they will make podcasts, or they will do some other thing, which is the new medium, you know, TikTok videos, and cinema will become something that has a long life, but it's a life that consists of, you know, a classic, an oeuvre, a classic oeuvre, and not a constantly renewing, vibrant life art form. Oh, I don't know. It's a bit depressing, isn't it? I don't know if I want to say that or not. People are still making good films. I think when I proposed this idea to you most recently, you said people are still making great films. The problem is that we aren't seeing any of them. Yeah,
I think that is it. I think it's funny though, because there's so many things being made right now. You'd think there'd be things that we could easily point to that are real classics, instant classics, and great films right away. But it takes a little while, and sometimes it takes a little while for things to get noticed or re-noticed, I guess. You think of Jeanne Dielman, for example. I mean, now that it's on that list, people are looking at it again and seeing what a good film it is. So
it's 48 years old, isn't it? And now suddenly getting recognition.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. I mean, I understand your point about music. It's like I still listen to music that's for the most part at least 30 years old, at least 20 years old now. But you know, music you encounter a little differently because you can have it on all the time. You're going to re-listen to things more than you would rewatch a film. There aren't too many films that I rewatch. So I think you've got a good point there in the sense that you hit a certain age and you just are worried about other things, or you're focused on other things, and maybe not as likely or inclined to check out new things and new music. I think that's sort of just a natural development in the human character. But I do hope. I mean, I can't really name a lot of directors. I mean, I was thinking about, Wes Anderson should sort of be on this list somewhere. I mean, you would think that he's like a real auteur and he's got a real style, and I could not put any one of his films on a top 10 list. So right. I think, it's a matter of, I think for me, I'm not really a blockbuster or mainstream film fan. So it's even harder for me because you have to really dig pretty deep into the streaming to find independent films. I mean, I guess they're coming out. I think they're starting to be co-opted. I don't know if independent cinema really lives or exists anymore in that way, but I mean, that's where I would look, and I think it's a little harder to find that. And then given that I'm older and less inclined to go searching, I think it's very hard for me to point to people that I really respect and really want to see every one of their films as they come out at this point.
Curatorship, that's what we need. Curatorship, damn it.
Yeah. Well, if we keep talking like this, the film that we're about to go see is already probably a classic. Because we've been talking.
We've been talking about it so long ago now. Yeah, exactly. It's turned into cinema already. You're right. Yeah, let's get a popcorn and go and see a film. Okay.
It's starting to sound like the golden age of podcasting. That's coming up next too.
Before the young people ruin it.
Start getting nostalgic for podcasts.